All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with the Mayor and City Manager. Good morning, City Manager.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing today? Good? Excellent. Yeah. All right, we'll go over some of the hot topics that are going on in Lake Havasu City. And then after that, we'll answer any questions that you may have about any of the topics that we covered or anything that might be on your mind. So we'll first start with, there's been a great announcement. Last month, you may recall, we're joined by the chiefs. We had Chief Doyle with us and Chief Palafis joining us with the coffee. And we also announced at that time that Chief Doyle, our police chief, was retiring. But Mr. Knudsen has announced the new police chief, so I'll turn over to you to announce him again.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Chief Doyle, stellar career with Lake Havasu City, really put Lake Havasu City in a position of success for our police department and done so many great things for the community on the job and off the job. First and foremost, we need to recognize Chief Doyle as he rides off into the sunset. And his last day will be on December 16th, so that's coming up in just a couple of weeks. And in anticipation of Chief Doyle retiring, we did an extensive nationwide search. Had over 100 applications that came into Lake Havasu City for the position of police chief, and we had 5 applicants that we put through the ringer. We brought in police chiefs from outside Havasu, including Flagstaff, Scottsdale, and Goodyear. Joined us. We had 2 interview panels. We had them present to our Mock City Council, which was the executive team here at the city. So a very extensive selective process and a long day for those applicants. Head and shoulders far beyond the rest of the applicants. Our very own Captain Troy Sterling stood out, and I selected him to be our next police chief, and very proud of that. It's so gratifying when you have somebody within the department that shows passion and has the skill set, has the integrity, the character that's required for that position. So really thrilled about the future for Lake Havasu, and we all should be. So thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And again, congratulations, Captain Sterling, who's with us here this morning. We're excited for your leadership. And Captain Sterling's been with Lake Havasu City PD for many years and has worked in our department and has helped Chief Doyle achieve some of the great things that the police department has achieved. Chief Doyle was really an advocate for creating an accreditation program so that police departments around the state and around the nation could live up to standards of integrity, honesty, and policing within their communities. He was able to champion that, and Lake Havasu City was one of the first agencies to be accredited under that, and that was under the guidance of Captain Sterling and Chief Doyle's leadership. So congratulations. We're looking forward to that transition at the end of the month. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now we'll transition into some infrastructure projects that we'll talk about. We have, in this current year's budget, we invested $10 million additional dollars to our roads program. So this is going to allow us to do some really significant things within the roads and roads improvements within our community. We generally spend a little over $2 million on road improvements and road maintenance throughout the year. We're still spending that, but we have a $10 million investment that's going to go to our major road thoroughfares is what the roads will be. So these are going to be similar to what we have in the Uptown McCulloch between Acoma and Smoke Tree, where that mill and fill, where the road's beautiful now. That's what we're talking about. So we're talking about doing that on the lower part of McCulloch, Riviera, Lake Havasu Avenue, Industrial. Am I missing a road?
The Mesquite area and so forth.
So the main areas that we all travel every single day. And so these will be where we take up the roadway, take it back down to the base, and we put new roadways down. So it's going to be a great improvement to our road circulation and the things that we have going along within that. The council approved the engineering contract this last month to be able to start that work. That work will happen starting in the spring. That's not the only road improvement that we'll be doing, though. We'll also be doing Highway 95. So Highway 95 is a significant thoroughfare for all of us. It's our only way in and our only way out of our entire community, but it's also in really horrible condition. There's some areas that you'll lose some teeth chattering when you go along the roadway because it's in such bad disrepair. But through the leadership of Leo Biasucci, who's our state representative, the support of Representative Cobb and Senator Borelli, we've been able to get direct appropriation funding funding from the state to do this state highway and redo it. So this will be a complete mill and fill as well. So from Sarah Park all the way up to I-40, it's a huge undertaking. A huge undertaking will be redone, and it's going to be really nice. But I want you to harbor those feelings you have right now of these new roadways and how great it's going to be, because the construction's going to be a nightmare. So please understand that that's going to be a very difficult prospect. We're trying to coordinate to ensure that the state highway system, when it's being redone, our roads aren't going to be redone. That would be alternative routes for it. But Jess, I know you and your team are working with ADOT to do the go out to bid for it, and also coordinating our stuff. So I don't know if you have any additional details to share.
Just to say that this is an ADOT project. Early on, we tried to get the project from ADOT and let us contract and handle the 95 within Lake Havasu City, but we were denied that request, and I can see some justification there too. Although it probably would have been done by now if that was the case. It's been a year and a half, roughly, since those dollars were appropriated. And ADOT looks like they're going to be releasing the RFP or the bid documents, and it's extensive. It's a lot of work, trust me. But the bid documents are going out this month in December, and the anticipation there too is that they'd be able to select the contractor, and then they're still hoping to start that work April, May. Again, this is ADOT, and we light fires. We hold them accountable, and keep them on task. But it's their project, and we're doing the best that we can to push it along very, very quickly. So we have other projects within the community, and airport runway, and other road projects that the mayor that you alluded to, and we have others that's going to take place here on Lake Havasu Avenue. In that vicinity too, so we love to coordinate, but it's coming. We're hoping that we'll see actual trucks and removal of some asphalt starting in that April-May timeframe. So.
Yeah, so 2 legislative sessions ago is when the money was initially appropriated, as Justin mentioned. When we went to go do the work, they said, we're just going to do curb to curb, which for lay people, that's like, okay, great. Yeah, that's what we want to do. But it really is not what we wanted to do. So the areas inside of the intersection, so if you take, Smoke Tree, Mesquite, Industrial, Acoma, all of the intersections that go along there's about a 10 or 15 foot stretch of road that goes into it that kind of is pebbly right now. And it's because
it's terrible.
22 years ago when we redid the road, they didn't do the entire roadway, including their right-of-ways. So we went back and really through the leadership of our legislative delegation down at the state, they got additional appropriation in this last budget year. So we'll be able to take both sets of the appropriation and do the roadway the correct way and do it again all the way from Sarah Park to I-40. So very, very exciting there. We also have in the news, you may have read about Second Bridge and what that might look like. So for many, many years, Lake Havasu City has always thought that we're going to need a second bridge. And so there's some ways that could be just folklore that people are just like, oh, we need a second bridge, we need a second bridge. Back when the island had nobody on it, there was nothing out there, and people were still talking about a second bridge way back in the 70s. So the city has done lots of things from a planning perspective. We have allocations in land for right-of-way on both the mainland side and the island side for a second bridge. We have all of those pieces in play in case we do need a second bridge into the future. So one of Representative Biasucci's passions was that second bridge. He grew up here. He was born, raised here, and grew up here, and he'd grown up hearing all of these stories that we need a second bridge. But then we started asking, but do we need a second bridge? So, like, is it really what we need? Which I don't know the answer to it, but somebody knows the answer to it. And so Leo Biasucci went through and really championed to get some money set aside from the state to do a bridge safety survey to determine what and if and how we need a second bridge. So it'll be a great tool that will do traffic counts. It'll take into account what the future growth of the island is going to be, the growth that we've seen over the last 3 or 4 decades out on the island, and what components go into that. So there's some bridge technology or road technology that allows for roadways to change directions and change patterns. Is that what we need versus a second bridge? We don't know the answer to that. But just to put some thoughts out there, there's a second bridge or maybe a third bridge going in up in the Laughlin Bullhead City area over by the Anderson Fieldhouse that Clark County, Nevada is putting in. And so that's just a basic concrete bridge going across the Colorado River at a much smaller span, and that's over $50 million just for that bridge alone. And so in Lake Havasu, of course, we have the iconic world famous London Bridge. It would not be doing justice if we put just a concrete, basic, boring bridge. Those are the conversations as a community we have to have. Now, from a public safety standpoint, a lot of people mentioned to us that from a safety standpoint, there's people on the island and there's no way for us to address if there was some sort of a catastrophe out there. We have plans for that. So we have mobile command centers, we have police, we have fire boats. We also have certain restrictions built into the code regarding fire sprinklers and the such for the development out on the island. So there are ways that we are able to work around what that looks like. But we do have a lot of significant growth that's happened on the island. And so I think at the end of saying all of that is we just don't know. But the monies that Representative Biasucci got allocated will allow us to find the answers and see if this is what we need to do. And if so, what does that look like? Start having community conversations about investment in the future, what those investments look like, what type of a bridge, if that's the answer, should be there to complement what we already have. All of those questions will need to be answered. But this next week, we have a zoning issue that will be coming before our Planning and Zoning Commission regarding some additional changes out on the island. So Jess, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what that process looks like and how that will be tied into this study and additional growth.
No, absolutely. So again, thank you to Representative Leo Biasucci for the dollars that are going to use to kind of study the situation. On the next council meeting, which should be on Tuesday next week, right?
It's actually Planning and Zoning on Wednesday.
Oh no, I'm sorry. The funding for the council meeting.
Yes,
a couple meetings coming up with lots of topics to discuss. But that'll be the funding that comes from ADOT to the city for $200,000, and that's because of what the Representative Leo Biasucci did. And that allowed the city to then commission a study. $200,000 for a study. There's a lot that we can do with regards to that study, and that'll allow us to do exactly what you described, Mayor, and look at some concepts, some cost estimates. What does that look like? Now, the actual verbiage or the language in that bill that's tied to these dollars is for basically an emergency access for a second bridge for use for emergency access or emergency evacuation. I believe was the terms, the words that were used there. So is that and then be able to do cost estimates, maybe some conceptual drawings. The concept of a second bridge is one thing, but what if we put it out there to take a look at exactly what it is and where the links are in terms of that traffic coming in either side. We've had some growth and some development since that was first studied as in that location back in early 2000s. So. But as alluded to, there's a lot of money for a study, so we're going to do what we can to take advantage of that situation and look at it from a bigger perspective of not just that location, but any other concepts tied to traffic flows back and forth off the island. And then let's have an eye forward. Let's be thinking about how the island's going to develop in the long term. Right now, I think if you look at just our permanent residents per census, and we have more seasonal and residents that are out there and so forth. But about 600 people, a little less than 600 people live on the island right now, full-time Lake Havasu City residents. The residents out there impact our ability as a city to provide services, fire, police, planning and zoning, infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, and so forth. What happens when that island gets to 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000? So we're going to utilize this mechanism through this study to do some growth projections on the island. Remember that 80% of the island is state land. 80% of the island is state land. It's not even in private hands right now. So there is some of that state land that is leased, Crazy Horse and other areas on the island that's leased from state land to be developed over the course of 30 or 50 years. But there will be investors, there will be developers, there will be builders that are gonna contact state land and ask them to sell them pieces of land, and that land will be developed more so than you're seeing today. So what does that look like as the future unfolds and as we move forward? Is that going to be in 5 years and 10 years, 25 years? Those projections, those populations, our residents on the island are going to demand city services. And so we want to be able to say that, okay, at this point, with this type of demographic, it's going to impact our police in this fashion. It's going to impact our ability to provide fire protection services in this way. what's the population trigger that's going to need for us to improve infrastructure, water and sewer out in that area? So we're talking about Second Bridge, but we're also talking about a bigger picture about the development of the island and how that impacts our ability as a city to provide services and quality of life for all of our residents.
Yeah, so we'll have that discussion on December 13th, which is our next council meeting, when we will have to do the agreement with the state to be able to get that process going. So you'll read a little bit more about that in the news, and this is just really the beginning of that discussion and what that future might hold
And if
for
I could
us.
just add to, because a lot of conversations, we said the word bridge and Second Bridge quite a bit. We have right now for this effort, we have $200,000 from the state to study the concept of a Second Bridge. There is no money allocated by the state. There is no money in the city's coffers or in any of our budgets or any of our existing plans for our budgets to fund a Second Bridge as traditionally known in Lake Havasu City. So all that's got to we're going to study the concept first and then make decisions later.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, because a lot of people think the money's in the bank to do it. It's not. So, but we'll have those conversations and we'll see what's right and talk with the public and the citizens to see if that's a direction that we need to move. A couple of follow-ups to last time that we met, things that have occurred. So short-term rentals, we talk about it all the time, month after month after month. But I'm happy to report that we did do the final adoption to the changes to our ordinance at the local level to help address short-term rentals. Now, these are just a few tools that were given to us during this last legislative session to cities and towns across the state of Arizona to help manage short-term rentals. So just a little backstory. Lake Havasu City is not trying to get rid of short-term rentals. We're not trying to regulate our way out of them. What we're trying to do is have peaceful coexistence within neighborhoods, so people that own short-term rentals can enjoy their property as such, and people that are living next door can enjoy their property as such. And so there is a happy medium. We know it can be achieved because we achieved it through an ordinance in 2014. Worked fantastic for 2 years until the state thought they knew better and changed the law. And so when they changed the law, the very first sentences of the law say cities and towns are exempt from
Shall not regulate.
Yeah, shall not regulate. I mean, it's like very clear, like you just don't get to do anything except for what we tell you can do. And at that time, they said you can't do anything. That was the very first bill in 2016. Well, through subsequent legislative sessions, we've been able to get things changed. And when I say we, this is a statewide effort of people that are impacted throughout this. Last year, we decided we got to change it up because it's just not working. The legislative session, year after year, we'd go in front of them and get nothing changed that actually allows us to help manage them at the local level. So we reached out to Senator Borelli, Representative Biasucci, and they supported our efforts, and Representative Biasucci actually ran a bill. Now, his bill wasn't successful, but some of the components of his bill did make it into the final legislation that was signed by the governor. So what we now are allowed to do is have a local registration process. So if you are a short-term rental owner, you have to register here locally. So at least we know who you are. You have to pay a registration or licensing fee each year of $250. That's actually prescribed in state law of what the amount would be. You have to have a 24-hour contact, and you have to share that contact with your neighbors. So front, back, left, right. If you have an issue with your short-term rental neighbor, you would call this 24-hour contact that's given to you, and you would have that addressed. And it's in their best interest to address it. Because there are penalties that are strengthened in the new state law that we then also codified in our code. There's some life and safety issues as well. They have to have insurance, an evacuation plan like you might see on the back of a hotel room door. They also have to have fire extinguishers and the like. So those are the major components. Am I missing anything on that, Jess?
No, I mean, you kind of hit on it. I mean, these are the few baby steps in the right direction. The state says, all right, cities, you guys can do about 5% of what you want to do. Here's a few things that work out. In the past, the state was requiring short-term rental owners to register with the Department of Revenue. They weren't even set up for it. They didn't have an application process when that legislation dropped. So now they're coming around and saying, okay, there's a local registration process for cities. Here's what you can charge. Here's how the process is going to work. Here's when you can suspend their license. Here's when you can deny the license, and it's very slim in terms of some of those parameters. But at least we have a local registration process, so that's good. And we did what we can to work within the language and do its best and do its right by our residents. So within our code, adopted by council, it states that each short-term rental owner has to put within their short-term rental on the back of the door or close proximity to it, is basically letting them know that you are expected to be respectful to the neighborhood. Noise and fireworks and those types of things will not be tolerated in this short-term rental. The 24-hour contact for this short-term rental is here. They fill in the blank, they put down the number, and then we let them know on that same form that all the neighbors in that neighborhood have this contact and have that phone number as well too. And then we were requiring that short-term rental owner, if that contact changes, that they have to notify the neighborhood. So that's the most important piece in my perspective, that I think that'll have the biggest impact out there, is that is to have that 24-hour contact in the neighborhood. We were advocating to go within 300 feet of every short-term rental, that they would notify it. State legislation came back and said you get to notify those that are directly touching, essentially, your property or right across the street. So, but we did put in the code too that if you want to make sure that everybody is happy, then 300 feet would be preferred but not required. So those are some of the things that they were able to do to move forward. Again, we just want the short-term rentals to operate in a responsible manner. And if there are any short-term rental owners out there that have questions about this process and the concept of commissioning with a 24-hour property manager or 24-hour contact, because that's going to be needed for this process. If you have a short-term rental, you need a 24-hour contact, because if your tenants are out there at 4:30 in the morning and yelling and screaming, that somebody has to control that situation, and that's going to be very, very important. We got our fingers crossed, and we have good vibes and looking towards the future. But we will not stop. In this legislative session and future legislative sessions, we'll be advocating for let the cities make some of these decisions ourselves.
Yeah, so we advocate for local control at all levels, and that's what we just need to know and be able to do what makes sense for us. And you may wonder, how come this is even an issue? Why can't we just address it? Well, again, the current state law said we couldn't address it.
It's illegal.
And then the cities that are impacted by it are Lake Havasu, Sedona, Page, Jerome's, these smaller communities throughout Arizona that we have a legislative delegation, but the delegation might cover 2 or 3 of those cities versus the bulk of the delegation coming from the bigger cities. So it is a challenge, and we're going to continue to advocate that we can have local control and address it the way that we need. We've made and taken advantage of all of the tools that the state has given us, as well as other tools that we've been able to use in our community, such as noise ordinances and those types of things that we've updated. So hopefully we'll find and strike that balance going forward, but that's where we stand now on that issue. We also have talked about the courthouse as well in the past. The courthouse is now moving full speed ahead. Council has given and allocated all of the monies for the courthouse. We expect to be in the courthouse about a year from now. It would be like our soft-ish opening. Maybe staff will be moving in next December. Just at our last council meeting, we had a subsequent follow-up to the construction bid documents, and we awarded the bids for all of the AV equipment, all of the cameras, safety, security issues that are going to be needed. There's a long lead time for those pieces of equipment, and so we needed to get on it early so we make sure that we have all of those components together. It's amazing when you think of a building or you think of infrastructure, we try to use our own experiences with like our homes or those types of things, which of course you're going to draw conclusions from experiences that you've had. But when you actually get into some of the details of these types of things, when we talk about the cost of a home per square foot, we talk about the home, the structure, what that looks like. That's what we do too at the city. So a lot of times people are talking about our renovation and what we're doing, and we're talking about the per square foot cost of what that looks like. And they want to include the furniture and the fixtures and all the things that we don't include when we're doing a home. And so they are different components and different elements of what's happening. But just also from a safety and flow standpoint through the courthouse, there's a lot of thought and a lot of regulation and actually a lot of rules that go into making sure that happens. And just you and your team have worked really hard to get those rules, bring it to council, and make sure that we're doing it in an affordable way. So I don't know if you have any feedback on your roles in those areas.
So the staff has been charged with by the council, by the community, is build something spectacular, but make sure it doesn't cost too much. So we're all over it. Our effort has been very extensive in making sure that every decision we make along the line is towards that end result. The courthouse itself, once it's constructed, once we have our court staff in the building and it's in operation, is going to allow them to do things that they can't do right now. And so that's the first thought there, is to make sure that we have a space where we can introduce more specialty courts and treatment programs and address mental health and some of the rampant drug use and provide more resources for the youth to break that path at an early age. So those types of things are what the courthouse is all about, in addition to the routine daily process that takes place. So that's important as we get to that point. We tried a different approach in Havasu we haven't done before, but we got the architect and the contractor in the room together to ensure that we knew exactly when an architect said something, we'd say, okay, how much is that going to cost? And what's the positive impact on this, or the negative impact? And line by line, we went through this as a team, as staff, with our all the builders, the architects, and all their teams. So we're in a really good spot. And I did ask our project manager to go and do some research. How are similar projects in Arizona costing on a per square foot basis? And came back with about 6 or 7 different comparables that were out there across the state. And per square foot, we were on the bottom of that list in a good way. And we feel great about the ability to be able to open those doors and improve the services in Lake Havasu City. So far, so great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the bottom of that list, meaning that we're spending the least amount of money per square foot than any other project. I was actually shocked that at this time in the world that 7 courthouse projects are happening in the state of Arizona. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are all statewide comparisons that are occurring across the state right now. So we're at the bottom of the cost in the facility. It looks fantastic with the pictures that we've been able to see on what they have designed on the renovation of that facility. When Jess talks about, the specialty courts and what that means for citizens, if you're not a person that enters into the court system, or you don't find yourself in a position that you need those services, you're still paying for them, though. So when our police department arrives at a call and they have to potentially arrest somebody, that person then gets jailed and to our jail. The city prosecutor's office then has to file charges against that person. They then have to prosecute that person, and then whatever the sentencing is. So there's follow-up with it, whether it be fines or jail time or whatever it might be. That all cost us taxpayers collectively money through that process. We have 2 treatment courts right now that are very successful and award-winning. One is our youth treatment court, which allows for youth that find themselves in a position of trouble to get through and work through whatever that trouble is to ensure that they don't reoffend. And then we have our veterans treatment court. Our veterans treatment court has a recidivism rate of about 9%. Traditional courts have a recidivism rate of 85% or more. What that means is they reoffend at that level. Once you're in the system, 85% of the people reoffend again.
They never get out of the system. Never. Over and over and over the entire lifetime.
Yeah, but once they go through our treatment court, we know it's 9%, which means less calls to the police department, less arrests, less prosecution, less all of those services. So collectively, it saves all of the taxpayers money in that process. And it also allows to have upstanding citizens within our community that are out doing the great work that everyone in our community does together, instead of going through this process through court action or the like. So very excited to be able to talk about those future opportunities. Of course, those don't come without an upfront cost to do that, but we'll have those discussions once we actually have a facility that we can do those services from. So we also have, at our last council meeting, we were welcomed by a big fire truck that was out in front. And this was the idea of our fire chief, Pete Plofis, who really looked at what our infrastructure looked like and equipment in the fire department, and looked at it through a different lens. We purchased 6 rigs in 2014 all at the same time.
Yeah. 6 all at the same time. So now we have to replace them. Theoretically.
Yes. How do you do that? So at the time, it must have made sense that we bought them all at once. Yeah. But now that we're having to look at how do you replace that infrastructure, it doesn't make so much sense financially. So, but the fire chief went through and said, let's take a look at refurbishing our fire engine. So let's take an entire fire engine, take it down to its chassis, refurbish it, and rebuild it. And what would that cost be? And the council, through the support of Jess and then the council's adoption, to allow that process to go forward, we were able to refurbish our first fire engine at a cost of about $350,000. If we were to purchase a brand new rig, we would be in the $1 million range. So a huge cost savings for us. And what the plan would be is that we would do a refurbish, a new purchase, a refurbish, a new purchase, and then get on a cycle so we're never in a position that all of our rigs are down or need to be replaced at one time. It also would allow us for our fleet and vehicle maintenance crews to be able to have a proper flow on how to maintain these vehicles versus all 6 of them needing everything at the same time. Oil changes at the same time, tires rotated at the same time, all of that type of stuff. So it's a very exciting prospect. The engine looks new. It has amazing light technology with the LED lights. You may see this. This rig happens to be at Station 5. So if you're in the downtown area and see a dispatch call from that area, you will see this new rig out in action. But theoretically, it's a brand new fire engine for a third of what the cost would have been otherwise. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We also have talked about dredging in the past year, and we thought, maybe naively, that we would get an emergency permit prior to this boating season that we just had. So we were thinking in June we'd get in there and be able to dredge the south end of the channel, which has really created a bottleneck, and it's a safety hazard down in that area. And our permit finally got approved in November. Late October, early November, for work to commence next week. So next week we'll have crews out there at the south end of the channel. They will be located at London Bridge Beach. That's going to be the area they're going to work from. They're going to work on that chokehold to get that out of the navigation issues. They'll take those dredge materials over to the land we have on the island to dry out. And then we're still going to go forward to do a more expansive dredging project in the future. But there are restrictions from the Army Corps of Engineer. And is it just Army Corps that has the restrictions?
Army Corps is the biggest one for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So of when
There's
you
others.
can do it based on the environment?
Timing, we have to get it done this month. We can't bleed into January. I mean, there's time frames, there's approaches, so much red tape. It's taken us over a year to get to the point where we got our permit for emergency action. Yeah.
So, but it'll be good. You may have noticed if you're a boater and you go to the channel often, or you even just go to the channel area, you may have noticed this summer that we put up signs on the Rotary Beach side that say, no parking here along that area. The reason why is we were trying to open up as much free flow areas so that boat traffic could get through and not be obstructed by swimmers or boats that were just parked in the channel. So it's going to be a great improvement. We also have some new tour boats out there. Dixie Belle's back on the water, and it's a big boat, and it's hard for it to get through when there's other boat traffic that are there. But so there's lots of different reasons that we need to do it, but it's all because of safety. The north end also needs to be dredged in the future, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So
you start looking at, if you look at some old historic pictures, aerial photographs, and certainly when you're on the island, you look back at Havasu proper, or if you're on the water and look back at Havasu. I mean, you don't really see, we're on a big slope and a slant. And if you recall correctly, is that dredge, or the island did not exist until McCulloch dredged it after he built the bridge. So that's a man-made channel that's on an alluvial fan with all the sediment that continues to wash down all throughout from the mountains down to the water. So after you dig that out, just like maybe as a kid with a sandcastle and playing out there too, it wants to naturally go back to its original form. So it takes a lot of effort over the course of years to maintain what we have out there, and we're seeing on the south end that we needed to do something now for safety concerns, immediately, but long term, just to preserve preserve the channel itself.
Yeah, it's been about, is it 10 years?
10 years?
Yeah, about 10 years is when we did it last. And we did both sides at that time. It wasn't on an emergency permit. We were able to do a whole area on the south end. And the dredge material that we took out filled half of the Rotary Bowl. I mean, it's a lot of dredge material that comes down over just a decade from storm wash off into that area. So we'll continue to stay focused on that, get the right permits, get the right partners, and continue to keep that channel open and flowing freely.
But there's no plans to take that material and put it in Rotary Park in any way, too. So that just because in the history that occurred, that's not moving forward.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
We have other plans, other locations.
Yeah, good point. All right, we'll talk about a couple of things that are coming up in the future. You might read about in the paper coming up. One is our utility rate study. We did a utility rate study about 18 months ago, and it went into effect last October of 2021. At that time, there was components. We basically shifted our entire rate structure and how we pay for water and sewer rates. The reason that we had to do that is that back when McCulloch first started Lake Havasu City, we had an irrigation and drainage district, the IDD. And that IDD was supposed to go away when the city incorporated in 1978. However, it had debt still, the IDD, from the initial sewer infrastructure that was put in for our community. Because it had debt, it couldn't be dissolved during the incorporation of our city, but it continued on for many decades because it contributed $5.7 million to the water fund through a property tax. So you all have enjoyed a property tax cut this year. You may have noticed on the city side of it, there's lots of taxing districts on your property tax bill. So sometimes we get lost in the fray. You did get a tax cut from the city, but because of valuations, you may have noticed that your tax bill stayed flat or was a little higher or just a little bit lower. But that $5.7 million went away, and we had to determine how were we going to get and make up those funds, because the water and wastewater system is a nonprofit fund. It's paid by the ratepayers. It costs this much to operate and deliver those services, and those ratepayers then have to pay accordingly, so that at the end of the day, the fund is clear and solvent. And so we went through and looked at a variety of different things, and of course, change is hard. And when things change, people get upset, and that occurred. And so the council addressed some of those concerns, mostly with the multifamily homeowners. Multifamily homeowners were not paying a base charge for each unit at that time. And the new rate structure had that. And so we came up with a compromise, mostly because HOAs have restrictions, and they're governed by state statute as well. They can't raise their rates, and the HOAs were actually paying the water bill versus individual owners of the condos or dwellings paying their water bill. And these were all just nuances that unless you live in that experience or experience it, you just don't know it until it goes into place. So we addressed that, got that solved last October, and we said we would come back in a year because Lake Havasu City has a lot of seasonality built into it. So our water flows and water use is based on our visitation, our short-term owners, people that live here. They own property, but they only stay here in the winter, or they own property only come here during the summer. There's fluctuations in how we deliver water and wastewater services. And so let's get a whole year of history so we can see what that looks like, take those all into account, and then we'll recalculate what that looks like. We also knew at the time that drought declarations were going to be called, which have been called. We've known that for quite some time. And how can you build into your rate structure conservation methods that naturally lower the water use that we have? So there's lots of components that are coming through. So the actions that will happen next is that we'll have to award a bid to a company that's going to do all of this analysis for us, and community outreach and discussion with city staff and the council, and then we'll have to adopt new rates going forward. Currently, we do 5-year projections. Well, we do grander projections than 5 years, but currently our 5-year projection, because that $5.7 million went away, the system is not going to be solvent unless we take action. So nothing to be alarmed by. We knew that. We knew that last October when we did this. We knew we would be circling back once we understood the nuances of what that change looked like, what the cycle looked like, and that we'd come back and bring all of those things forward so that we could address the system. So that will be coming forward and timing, Jess, on all of those pieces?
The contractor will come before council for the selection of that contractor in January, and so that at that point, then that'll kick off that activity, and then probably coming back at the council within the next 30 days or so. Shortly after that, 30 to 45 days in a public arena. at a public meeting, I should say. No fighting. At a public meeting to discuss some of the what we're trying to accomplish. Recall that the city's water fund and the city's sewer fund, it's a nonprofit. So any projects that we want to accomplish to maintain the system and keep it in good order, we need the funds to do that, and that's all we need for funds. We don't want any more than what it takes to operate the system. We're nonprofit as opposed to other cities in Arizona or across the country. So that's first and foremost. So I think the initial conversation. So if you're generating some different ideas, bring them to the future meetings. So we're going to be talking about the rates, right? But maybe there's some things we can do this go around that may be different than in years past. Where are there particular programs that make sense for some folks, right? So Mayor, you've talked about maybe low flow toilets and getting some of that out there. Maybe there's some type of incentive that's out there for removal of grass and greenery on the property. These are things that have a water conservation bent to it, and that's going to have those conversations are going to be included with the utility rate study, and to make sure that we're combining our rates with the operation of the systems, but also how does that impact our need to conserve water in Havasu or in the Southwest as well too. So. And then one of the first conversations we're going to have before we even look at the numbers is going to be, okay, we have a 5-year CIP, but when we do the study, we're going to have 10-year projections. And what does it cost to maintain the sewer system? What does it cost to maintain the water system? So the first step is okay, here's the projects. Let's put them out there in the public. Let's put them out there in front of council and the city team, and make sure that these projects make sense, that are needed, that are budgeted accordingly to the way we need to operate the system in a consistent and safe manner. And so then we'll have the cost of the system, and then at that point, then we'll work back and try to figure out how do we identify fees or rates that are going to allow us again to make the improvements and do the maintenance on an ongoing basis. So those are some of the first steps that'll be part of that process. Are there programs in place that we need to take a look at that would help those that are on much more of a fixed income that maybe qualify for some type of a different rate process? I think it's something that needs to be discussed, and we'll figure that out if that's an approach we take or not an approach that is taken. So some of those things will be part of those early conversations.
And so the cost of not taking care of your infrastructure can be seen just in our neighborhoods and on the news media the last couple of years of systems that did not take care of and do the proper infrastructure. Just here in our area, Havasu Lake, just across the river here, had an issue this summer where they weren't able to provide water services. They weren't maintaining their system to the proper level, and it really caused issues for them. I don't know if they're even still solved on what their issues are. Here locally over in the Horizon 6 area, there's no fire flow. There's no fire flow because they didn't maintain their system properly, so there's not enough water pressure to run their fire hydrants out in that area.
Mayor, we had a fire there just within the last 2 weeks. Our fire trucks here in Havasu are responding. It's a county area, but we're responding to that property. We're driving back and forth filling our tanker, just so we can put water on the property. We couldn't pull water off of that system out there. So obviously there's a water and a quality of life element tied to it, but there's public safety that's tied to this. Our engines and our tankers had to drive back and forth to fill up the water just to put water on that fire.
Yeah, so it's really important that we continue to take a long-term approach to our system, ensure that we're investing properly in the infrastructure, and then at the end of the day, that it balances out. We discharge the rates that are necessary for the capital infrastructure, the cost to deliver the services, and the like, so that we have a maintained system so we don't ever have to experience those types of things. Mm-hmm. Also coming up shortly will be a parking area. We're going to look at acquiring property on Swanson. It's right across the street from ASU. For those of you that have lived here a long time, it's the old senior center land on Swanson Avenue. That's owned by the county. And we have been working with Supervisor Johnson's office to bring this forward. We've already had the support from the County Board of Supervisors to proceed with negotiations. The next council agenda, I believe, is it the we work in so far in advance. I sometimes lose track of when it's going to go in front of.
We're looking at 3 agendas all at one time sometimes. And it'll be up the next city council meeting.
Yeah, so December 13th, we'll have an item on there to enter into the appraisal of the property.
Yeah, we'll move for the purchase, and then on December 5th at the Board of Supervisors, they're going to be voting on it on their end. We need five yes votes for that to advance. If one person on the board votes no, then it's a dead item at that point.
Yeah, but we do have some history from their first vote, which was a unanimous vote. So we're hopeful that they will move forward and allow us to explore this opportunity. What our initial intent for this property would be is, one, obviously acquiring downtown property is a good thing, but it's already public property that's being underutilized, and we'll be able to use it for additional parking resources. ASU is a university and does great things, but it also provides soccer fields for the over 1,200 families in our community that take part in our local soccer program. And so on Saturdays and Sundays, you might drive by and be like, what are all these cars doing? They're there for the soccer program, and they do need some overflow parking. We also had an issue in front of council for a zoning issue next to the Views, which is the property right in front of ASU. And we had some concerns from neighboring business owners that there's not enough parking as it is in that area. And so we wanted to look and see how we could acquire additional parking resources for that area. And of course, as our downtown events continue to grow, we need to have resources to have places for citizens to park when they go and enjoy those events in that area. So that'll come again before the County Board of Supervisors next week. In 2 weeks, it'll come before City Council. And then it'll have to come before us again once we have negotiated whatever it is that we can negotiate. But, it's public property, so it's a very public process that takes multiple public meetings to do. So that's what we're going through. We also applied in our last council meeting for a SLIF grant, which is the State Lake Improvement Fund, SLIF. And again, Representative Biasucci really championed this. SLIF funds are a portion of the gas taxes that are equated to fueling watercraft. So obviously in the state of Arizona, Lake Havasu is a huge contributor of that. And so the program went away for many years. And Representative Biasucci championed to bring that back. And so now it's back, and we were awarded a grant to do some of our fire and police boat projects. The county was awarded a similar grant for that as well. And this year, with the grant funding that's available, we're looking to go and take a look at Site 6. So if you use Site 6 or you use the launch ramp at Site 6, or you've ever been out there, or you've been one of the scorecard keepers at Site 6 where people are launching, you know what a nightmare it is out there. So it's really steep, the ramp, and it's also very, very slick. And so we want to come in and address that. We're going to be able to, if awarded the grant, we'll be able to reduce the slope by 15%?
Up to 10%. Okay. So which is have an impact on there. They start looking at some of those designs. So, but we're able to do is reconstruct that area, new concrete, new rebar, the slope up to about 10% decrease, and make it a lot easier to launch and collect your boat.
And we'll be able to also go into the water a little bit, because if you do use the area, you realize you get the trailer in and then all of a sudden you just fall off. And so we'll be able to address that issue. Jess and his team over the last couple of years have gone in there and basically tried to rake the concrete to make
grind it down.
Yeah.
Like a grinder.
So you had something to traction, so you didn't get out of the truck and slip down. So we're excited about this project. This will be a good project for our citizens. And the one thing about Site 6 is it's primarily used by citizens, whether you're out there using it as a launch facility, you're out there fishing on the fishing dock, so you might park there to use the island trail. I mean, citizens love Site 6, and we're excited to be able to go forward with that grant application. All right, so we are getting close to where we're going to open it up to your questions. But before we do, it's the first Friday is always Coffee with Mayor and City Manager, which you're at today. But it also is First Friday, so this evening down on the Main Street area will be First Friday. We invite you to go down and enjoy that. This weekend is also a special treat for citizens to go enjoy the Boat Parade of Lights, which will be tomorrow night, December 3rd, down in the channel. It starts around 6 p.m. Or 6:30, depending on what part of the channel you watch it from. So if you're down at the Rotary Park area, it'll start around 6. If you're down in the Village area, probably around 6:20 or so is when that will occur. We invite you to go and enjoy that. And then on Sunday, we will have the official lighting of the official community Christmas tree down at Wheeler Park. That will be at 6 p.m. We have partners with My Radio Central, KJJJ, and KNTR that put on this event, but they do it in the legacy of Mr. Frederico, who back in the early days of Lake Havasu, when there really was nothing except for a lot of dirt land and a few homes and some really great citizens that were building this community, he wanted to ensure that the children of Lake Havasu had Christmas. And the way that he did that is he and a group of folks went down to Phoenix, got the big evergreen tree that sits in Wheeler Park that's now adorned with Christmas decorations that the city staff has been putting up over the last couple of weeks, and planted that. But he didn't stop there. Him and his friends went to the stores, and when I say stores, we're not talking about Ross and Walmart. We're talking about Kingman and Needles and on Old Route 66 to go, and old Highway 95, which was not 20 minutes up to I-40 like it is today, and got presents to make sure every kid in Lake Havasu City had presents. So for the legacy of his family and the legacy of our community, we will be there at 6 p.m. on Sunday to do the official lighting, and we would welcome you all to be there. And then finally, we'll have our community dinner, which is a dinner that's for the community, by the community, so that the community donates and puts together all of these things. And it's a traditional holiday feast that we invite you to come and enjoy. It's on Friday, December 9th. There's 2 seatings, and that goes beyond my memory. So what time? 4 and 6.
4 o'clock and 6 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Both of our memories. Yeah, we cheated.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yes. So 4 o'clock is the first seating, and then we will, at 6 p.m., will be the second seating. So both the same experience. Santa will be there, along with Toys for Tots, and the Marine Corps League actually is a partner in that. So we invite you all to come down, enjoy, have fun, fellowship with fellow community members, and enjoy that night. It's at the the community center. The community center or the aquatic center. So with that, I would like to introduce a couple of my colleagues that are with me this morning. We have Councilmember David Lane is here. Thank you for being here. And we have Councilmember Cameron Moses. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And with that, we will give the microphone to Councilmember Lane, and he will go around and start taking questions.
Yeah, while he's doing that, like I mentioned too, tonight our Lake Havasu City High School, our Knights are in the semifinals. I think first time since 2015, Councilmember Moses, and only the third time that's ever happened in the history of the school's football program. So tonight the bridge will be purple and gold, and they'll be in Gilbert and kicking their butts.
Nice.
Thanks. Hold it close? Okay. Just a quick question about the short-term rentals. Is there a definition as to what actually constitutes a short-term rental? I mean, day-wise, less than 30 days, less than a year? Mm-hmm. Just a quick question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, the definition is less than 30 days. So anything over 30 days is a long-term rental. Anything less than 30 days is considered a short-term rental by state statute.
Morning, Mayor. Is there some sort of correlation between the new courthouse, and you guys talked about drug addictions, mental health, between that? Is there a correlation between that and, I'm going to say not ride along, but mental health care workers in town here? I mean, is there a rise in drugs coming across this border? Maybe the police chief could address that. I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. So our magistrate, Judge Mitch Kalali, has been advocating for additional court resources for nearly a decade and what we need to do. And he was the person that really pushed forward the youth court and the veterans treatment court. And through that process, we've learned that by doing these treatment-based court methodologies, that we're able to lower the recidivism rate and the impact to our communities. And so in his conversations with the city council, he would like to have a cohort court that addresses the mental or the behavioral health issues that may come and arise from this, and then also the drug issues that citizens are impacted by. And so over the last several years, we are seeing an increase in drug use. But it's, in the 80s, we had
Crack cocaine.
Exactly. I mean, it just shifts. I mean, we had like the Just Say No to Drugs campaigns happen there. And then when I was in high school in the 90s, it was the DARE programs. And now it's fentanyl. And last month when we had Chief Doyle with us, he talked about the fentanyl problems that are occurring and where that's coming from and why that's happening. And we also then had a subsequent follow-up meeting at the high school in early November, to talk to parents about fentanyl and what fentanyl is doing to communities and how it's being disguised and attractive to children. It's packaged like Skittles, or it has bright, colorful colors, and they're doing those types of things. So we are seeing that rise, but we're also increasing the education and the ability to ensure that our citizens don't fall victim to those types of tragedies.
Drug use in terms of fentanyl is skyrocketed. I mean, you're not talking about an increase of 20%. You're talking about increases in the thousands of percentages across Arizona from a drug that wasn't used very much to a drug that just is plaguing our communities. So that's tragic. Mental health per capita in Mojave County, and that includes obviously Havasu, is where we have more mental health issues in this area than the average. And so a couple things that we need to do from a law enforcement perspective, and I encourage you to talk to incoming Chief Sterling after the meeting, get to know him, and the direction that we're going. But we need to be tough on the folks that are bringing these drugs to our community, and we need to find a way to provide resources to those that to get them off, to provide other opportunities that are out there, whether they're in the core program or otherwise, under the direction of our police chief Dan Doyle and incoming Chief Troy Sterling too. We brought in Arizona Complete Health to Lake Havasu City. We don't have mental health for the most part. We have some, but we don't need it. We don't have mental health services to the degree that is needed. We provided space for them in our police department. It doesn't remove or negate our efforts as law enforcement to go after the bad guys and the scum that's out there that's pushing these drugs. But we now have a more of an entity in Havasu that's growing. They're going to hire another 7 or 8 employees, and these are folks where if you have mental health issues or need somebody at your doorstep with resources and be able to help in a situation, that's growing. We have that now in Lake Havasu City, and we more so. So through the courts, through the efforts of our Chief Doyle and incoming Chief Sterling, and how we advance this ball, it's a big deal across the board. Drug use, mental health issues. You combine the two, and it's a complete disaster. So thank you for the question.
Morning. This is more of a statement than a question. I was not able to go to the special meeting you guys had when you got sworn in for mayor and the city council, but I want to speak for myself and probably most of the citizens here. We're so fortunate to have you as our mayor. You're so well versed on many different subjects, and we really appreciate that. And I want to also thank all the hardworking council members. We're looking forward to a great city council and mayor for the next 4 years, and we really, really appreciate you guys and all you guys do.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Mayor, I got a couple of questions. On the short-term rental, did you say what date that's going to happen? My second question is, our Senator Sonny was not here. I was hoping he would be. Do you know anything more about the 2.5 flat tax? When is that going to be on schedule, or is it? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the question. So the short-term rental ordinance is going to go into effect on March 1st of 2023. We wanted to give the short-term rental owners the opportunity to come into compliance and learn about what that process looks like, and also give city staff the ability to put the process in place that we adopted. So it'll be March 1st. Senator Borelli could not be with us. He has been in Washington, D.C. this week, and so his schedule is pretty busy. But the question about the 2.5% flat tax is Arizona state income tax. It doesn't doesn't have anything to do with the work that we're doing at the city, but the legislature has done a good job of trying to reduce that tax rate. It is on schedule, and I actually read something in that now because this isn't really in my wheelhouse, but I do believe that the governor is trying to actually move it forward at a quicker pace than was previously planned. So because the state coffers are flush, Governor Ducey on his way out is trying to actually implement the 2.5% one tax year earlier. So again, that's speculation because it's not my wheelhouse, but it is moving forward.
Good morning. I had the great pleasure last Friday night to go down to the village, and it was packed. And I have 2 questions for you, though. One, the bathrooms down there are totally inadequate for a crowd of that size, including the channel now. We're wondering if there's funding available to replace those porta potties. The other comment is your seawall has now exposed rebars on the caps, and it's starting to crack and fall apart. I walk it almost every other morning. And are you going to address that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the village is a special place for so many citizens. It really is the heart of Lake Havasu. And in the early days, that's where everyone went for all of their entertainment. So they would go down there and dance on Friday nights, and there'd be bands and live entertainment and all of those types of things. But it's not public property. It's privately held property. So the city owns underneath the bridge, literally just under the bridge. So they have that island where the stage is at. The north side of the village is owned by private folks, and the south side of the village is owned by private folks. And they supply all of the services. So trash, toilet paper, water for the restrooms and the like. And they do that all for free. And have done that for many events. You might go down there for events. Yesterday, for example, at 6 o'clock, the Starline Elementary School choir and associated families of about 400 people were down there, and none of the shops were open. There's no way to monetize any of those types of things. So we work. The private landowners work in tandem with the city to try and ensure that we have the right infrastructure available when we do have events down there. Whether that brings in more porta potties or lighting or security or whatever that might look like. And so that's kind of how we address that. For those of you that followed me when I was a council member, you would know I'm the huge advocate of bathrooms in the channel. And the porta potties that are in the channel now are because of my advocacy efforts. And I still would like to have more permanent bathrooms on that side of the channel, similar to what we have over at London Bridge Beach. But we do have some challenges with water over there, and state land and other partners that are part of that. When it comes to the cracked concrete and the like, we are working on that underneath the bridge. The city is going to tear out all of that concrete underneath the bridge where they own. And then in partnership, the private developer on the south side of the English Village is going to work at the same time and tear up all of their concrete that's cracked as well, and do that project. So working with the same vendor under different contracts, we will be able to have that concrete replaced. Currently slated for the first week of January of this like in a month coming up, and it will last approximately a month or so. So for all of those walkers that love to walk that area, we might need to find alternative walking locations for that period while they're laying the new concrete. We love having the walkers down there, but they sure do think they own the place. And when we're doing these works, we need to keep footmarks off of the newly poured concrete. So hopefully that answered your questions.
During construction, blame Cal for the mess, and then afterwards you can give all the praise to the city staff. Yeah.
Mayor and manager, I have a 3-part question, all concerning finances. First, when you will begin your budget meetings, and then second, do the funds for the courthouse include the completion of everything you need to make the second floor council chamber courtroom usable? And when would you project the city moving in there? And then on the street and financing, does the 10 million include the 2 million, or is that on top of the 2 million? And does it include Acoma and Lake Havasu Avenue?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So we'll start with the courthouse. The money that is budgeted and what was approved by City Council does include the complete renovation of the second floor. The second floor is going to provide for a community gathering space. So what we're currently in the City Council chambers, which also acts as the police training room, or actually it's really the police training room that acts as the City Council chambers. But it's equipped with all of the AV equipment that the folks that are watching at home right now are able to see us and hear us. This is the only room like that in the city. So there were a few months this past summer we weren't able to meet for coffee with mayor because the room was already being used for trainings or otherwise. So as part of this process, we will have another community room upstairs that can act as a third courtroom and another community gathering space that we could have council meetings, community meetings, commission meetings, board meetings, those types of things that the public want to engage in. And we'll have two options of where to be. So those monies do include all of that completion. The road work, it is the 10 million is additional investment. We're still spending the 2 million on general maintenance that we do on an annual basis through our HERF funding. And that does include parts of Lake Havasu Avenue and anything on Acoma. It's the intersection. So we didn't talk about the elephant in the room, which is Acoma, Lake Havasu Avenue in between Acoma and Kiowa.
Yeah.
We know that's horrible, and we know that you're taking risks when you're driving that area. Okay. But we had some issues with a water main break that happened in the spring. You may have seen that. Water is pouring out everywhere for a short period. We got that repaired, and then we wanted, we needed to order new piping and stuff to be able to replace that area. We ordered it in April, May, and it wasn't going to be available till October, which turned into November, which we now have, except we're missing one valve, which I think was supposed to be here this week. I don't know if it got here yet. And so once that valve gets here, we will be able to start the project. And once we start the project, we'll start from the Kiowa portion and move to the Acoma portion. First is going to be replacing the ductwork and or the piping and all of those areas. We then will come in and do the road work. So we expect that area to be done by the end of May. May? I was going to say April. So.
Yeah, I know you're going to say April and May.
Yeah. All right. So we'll go with May. But then that'll be a nice roadway, and that'll be the Lake Havasu portion. And then I forgot your first question.
When do the budget meetings start?
First budget meeting starts with our council planning session, which will be the last week of January. So that'll start those conversations. And then Jess and his team will begin.
We'll have some budget work sessions that start taking place in April. Yeah.
But it's already started. The process, you and your team are starting right after the first of the year?
Oh, yeah.
Have you already started?
All of our departments have already submitted all the requests for the CIP. That deadline has passed. So now our budget and finance team are working on those numbers and trying to prioritize those. The personnel requests are coming in. The operational budgets are, it's all being worked on a staff level, just and so we can be prepared to present to council in the upcoming months. And then in the meantime, I'll be sitting down with every single department, talking about every single budget and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, and be in a good position to be able to present to the community and to the council. Here's the resources we have, and here's the plan for the next 12 months.
I was wondering about the $250 fee for the short-term rental, and how did they come up with that, and who gets that?
Yeah, so the $250 fee for the short-term rental is what is prescribed in state law. Now, state law is enabling legislation, so the changes that happened during this last legislative session allow the cities and towns the opportunity to take advantage of these tools if they so choose. So we so choose, and we did that, and this $250 was the maximum amount that you could charge. We elected to charge the $250 is because we're trying to minimize the impact of the cost of addressing short-term rental issues in our community to citizens at large. And so Councilmember Moses actually said it the best, is that with the short-term rental emerging market, and what that's done is it basically turned Lake Havasu City into the world's largest front desk. And so when you're staying at a hotel, you generally call the front desk when you have a noise complaint next door, and they send security up and those types of things. Now it's the city that's having to do that. And with zoning regulations on how it's set, we generally have zoning at its most basic form. You have a commercial zoning district. You then have higher residential living. You then move into single-family homes and residential estates, kind of as it layers through. But before we'd be able to put police and fire resources down in the commercial district, and within 3 or 4 minutes, we could be to any incident that occurs. Now, if you have a short-term rental over on South McCulloch, and then you have a short-term rental issue over on North Palo Verde, I mean, that's a 15, 20-minute drive between them, and we have to allocate police and fire resources accordingly. And so we're trying to offset the cost of that delivery of service to us. So that was why we did that. Now, you ask why did the state come up with that number? Well, the way the sausage is made down at the legislature is pretty dirty. So they call the industry, short-term rental industry, they called them like Airbnb and VRBO or Vrbo, they call them the industry. And I get really offended by that because they don't own any property in the state of Arizona at all. You own it. And they basically own a website, and they have more say than you do as property owners in the state of Arizona. It aggravates me to no end that's what they're listening to. They need to listen to the property owners and the citizens of our community. And because they have such a huge lobbying effort down there, again, not with our delegation. Our delegation is fighting for us, but there are 3 people amongst many people down at the legislature.
We talk about local control. One of the things with local control was we started those conversations with that legislation prior to being 250 was like, we'll let the cities determine what it is. We'll determine what is our cost to respond to short-term rentals, and then we'll come up with an application fee that will offset the cost of the city to manage, from our perspective, the short-term rentals and so forth. And they said, nope, let's do a max of 250. That's how it came about. Oh, we need a microphone. I'm sorry. Yeah.
You put it in the city. You put it in the city money, and you distribute it wherever it needs to go.
It pays for the cost of the
service.
city for our staff and for the application process and to ensure that the short-term rental owner is doing what they can and that the impacts to the neighborhood are minimal.
Yeah, it'll go into the general fund, and in the general fund is our funds, the departments that are most impacted. So police, fire, parks, and code enforcement.
No, I have a public announcement. Good morning. This is Sandy DeMarto. I'm with Mojave Community College, and I just wanted to remind you that tonight is movie night. It is the Grinch. The first 100 kids that arrive, they get a free stocking. I also wanted to let you know that I have partnered with a few businesses in the community for classes like wine pairing, hiking. I have hula dancing, also meditation and hypnosis. So if you're interested, I'll be here to pass out flyers. Just ask me any questions that you have concerns with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor. With the continued growth of our city, is the city doing anything to bring in additional medical services? We were at the hospital the other night, 10 and a half hours waiting for a child to be seen. And I know that we weren't alone. There were other people in there. So is the city, I know I had seen a sign over by ASU that another hospital was coming in. Is there anything that is pending, anything that is going to happen? As we continue to grow, we need to have something for the medical care of our citizens.
Yeah, great question. So we do have a lot of things that are happening in the medical arena. First is currently at Havasu Regional Medical Center, they have an interim CEO. They have announced a new CEO that will be starting right after the first of the year. So that will change the leadership and direction of Havasu Regional Medical Center. So, that's fantastic on one front. As far as medical developments and what's occurring within our community, we do have a new Veterans Administration Center that's going to be opening. It's a clinic. Yeah, it's going to be opening over next to Keller Williams on off of Highway 95 and Park Avenue at the corner lot there. It's going to be, currently they have a clinic in town. It's about 5,000 square feet. The new facility is going to be over 22,000 square feet. It's going to expand the services that they're able to offer to our veterans. We had a groundbreaking a month or two ago, and they expect to open that in early 2024. The sign that you saw going into ASU in the past that talked about a micro hospital, that is still moving forward, but not there. It's actually moving forward over at the mall. So down at the mall, there's going to be an additional hospital facility care clinic that's going to expand services. So there'll be radiology, there'll be some women's health, there'll be some primary care, there'll be a variety of different services that will be occurring there. What has worked really great for Lake Havasu City and what makes me so excited about these medical improvements and advancements is that competition breeds excellence, and the other care providers will have to increase their level of service to compete properly with these other facilities that are coming in. There also, just this last week, was a new grand opening of a women's health clinic that is offering some really amazing women's health services within our community, located on Lake Havasu Avenue next to Summerlin Financial. And so that just opened as well. So there's a lot of things that are moving. And again, from our perspective, it worked well with us when it comes to broadband and internet infrastructure. As soon as we announced our partnership or our agreement with Allo Communications, Suddenlink started to step it up, lower the prices, and offer different services.
And change their name.
And changed their name. And so it works. And so I'm excited that these different healthcare options are there. And then for my office, we do work with the medical providers to bring in associate physicians. And so there's healthcare challenges all across the world and the country right now, as far as labor shortages and the like. But we do have great partners such as Mojave Community College, which is, they're educating those nurses and radiology techs and physical therapy assistants and all of those people that we can put to work here. But we need to get them to stay here. And so during the pandemic, there was a lot of incentive to get on the road and travel. If you had those services, they would go on these contracts and get paid really crazy amounts of money to go do these contracts. Some of that now is drying up, which will hopefully restabilize the workforce in this area. But so we work with partnership. We have zero control over the medical. We don't own the hospital. It's not a community hospital. But we do have great communication skills, and we bring people to the table, and we communicate, and we share the challenges that people are having. And we do encourage our citizens to take advantage of some of the technologies that are afforded to them in their healthcare insurance. There's a lot of teledocs now, telemedicine, and also schedule appointments with your primary care. The emergency room should be used for emergencies, and if not for primary care services, which unfortunately a lot of folks use them for primary care services. So if we just balance the way we use our medical services, we'll be able to ensure that there's medical services for everybody.
You volunteered? Voluntold?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I wanted to know if there was a plan to dredge the mouth of the river. That's number one. The second one, when you put the seawall in, there used to be a ban on easy ups below the seawall, use it for boats, and then have the easy ups above that. Is that going to change, or has that changed? And then the other one, is there any way to clean up the Crazy Horse side of the north side of the channel so that more boats can beach?
All right. Yeah. So we'll start with the dredging of the mouth of the river, which it's pretty tricky when you're trying to get from Lake Havasu to the mouth of the river. This is out by like Crystal Beach, the refuge area. There are no current plans right now, but we are working. The Marine Association worked and dredged a channel over there on the west side of the Reeds over there, but that's all full. It's completely filled in now, and so that happened just less than 10 years ago, and so that shows you how much sediment comes into that area. We do know that it's an issue. Lake Havasu and the Colorado River are regulated by so many different partners, and we are looking at some of those things. We do have a coalition of all of those partners that get together regularly and address the safety issues of that area. area. But that's most of the movement we have on that area. When it comes to the channel, I don't know about the easy up. I'm down in the channel a lot, and I don't see easy ups. What are you are you talking about people beach and using easy up instead of a boat?
Yes.
Okay.
Because has created issues during mainly during COVID when everybody was out, more people than usual. It seemed like guys coming in with boats and don't have anywhere to go. Mm-hmm. And then I saw a lot of fights. And so
yeah. Yeah, good question. Yeah, so I will have to, like I said, I'm down there a lot. It was certainly an issue in 2020, but I haven't heard or seen anything in the last year or so occurring down in that area. Just initially off the cuff, it would be first come, first serve is kind of my opinion on it. If you have, not everyone can afford a watercraft, and if they're down there with an easy up enjoying the beach area, they should be able to do so. But we also need to make sure everyone's safe and we're not creating ruckus or chaos for people either. Like I said, I haven't seen that as an issue in the last year. If I'm off base, just let me know, and we can look at ways to address that. And there was a third question there, wasn't there? Oh, Crazy Horse. Yeah. So Crazy Horse is owned by state lands. Crazy Horse, the camping area, has a lease with the state land department. And then the other areas that are there, it's actually the natural way that the wind blows. And as far as developing that area, we would have to spend a lot of money to cut down that hill if you're looking on the west bank of that area. So there are no plans. We have no money allocated. And if we had money allocated or partnerships with the federal government to do some dredging stuff, that's what we would take a priority on, is the dredging, so it's safe and navigable, over the improvement of that area.
A lot of that rock and riprap on that side of the island is there in place to prevent erosion. Yeah, so I mean that lighthouse was in a real close danger to falling over. So there's some protections that took place, and that's why you see that large rock there. So, but yeah, we get it, and I think the overarching theme of your questions is provide some more space for boats in the channel, right? So those are the conversations that we have quite a bit, and see what we can do to make that happen. Again, it's not easy. We dredged out our forefathers, and Robert McCulloch and his team, created a channel that wants to close back in. So we have to make sure that we're doing things that aren't just for a year or two as well too, right? So, but yeah, we hear that all the time. We need more spaces for boats in the channel.
My question is about the airport. What are the chances of getting a shuttle to go to Las Vegas, Phoenix, so you could catch a flight?
Yeah. That's a great question, and one that would be welcomed by many, many citizens. So back before the 2010 census, we used to have commercial air service that took us down to Phoenix, and we had multiple flights in a day, and it was so nice. And then after the 2010 census, we were over 50,000 people, and the Essential Air Service grants went away, which were grants from the FAA that helped offset the expense of the carriers to do that. And so prior to the pandemic, we were really close to getting I don't know what you call it. I call it Uber of airports or of airplanes. I don't know what it really would be called, but it would be an airplane that would come. It would have scheduled service. You would pay a fee, and they would take you to let's just say Phoenix, for example. When you got to Phoenix, you then would at that point check in through TSA and go through the normal system. So you wouldn't do TSA here. You would get on this plane. They would shuttle you over to check in. You check in, check your bags in, whatever, and go through TSA. At that point, we were very close. We actually had two carriers that we were close with. So then after the pandemic happened, all of those kind of went away. But I do think in the future we will have something along those lines. So we have a really active and busy airport. It's a huge economic driver for our community. And if you don't use it on a regular basis, you really do use it. So because if you get Amazon packages or FedEx or any of those, it comes through the airport. And we use it for medical transport. We have a lot of our medical offices that fly in to work. So they not only bring the doctors,
nurses,
they bring the nurses and the support staff and everyone. We also have people that are on the transplant list. If some of our citizens are a donor, when they're ready to donate, those organs have to get moved very quickly, and that goes through the airport. So lots of things happen out there. The one thing that doesn't is we don't have a tower. So we don't have an airport tower. And so we, in Laughlin Bullhead Airport, they did a test run with American Airlines. And it didn't last. They have a tower and they have a beautiful airport as well, but it didn't work. And so it lasted just a year. And the way airport development is, and these are all the things that you're like, we just need an airplane or an airport with commercial air service. But once you start thinking things through and learning some of the nuances, they don't build airports within, was it 155 miles of another airport?
You know far more about this than I do.
Yeah, it's 155 miles of an airport, and Las Vegas airport's 151 miles. And so, I mean, we're 4 miles off. So, it's silly how all of that works. But chances of that happening in a TSA check-in method are very slim. But I do think we'll have a system that, again, I call it like the Uber of airplanes, where you buy a seat and it'll be like a 6-pack or maybe a 10-seater, and you fly into one of the airports and then jump through the system.
If we get the right partner, where the city will assist with bringing that to Havasu. But we need to find that right partner.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A couple months ago, I asked a question about outdoor lighting on houses. We used to have like 40 watts, 60 watts. And now with LEDs, I mean, these lights, everybody lights up their garage, leave it on all night long. And it's really bright, so we've lost our dark skies. And now I've got a neighbor that lives on another street from me, and he's got a flag, and he's got 2 lights shining right in when I'm on my view deck. I mean, at night, it's shining right at me. And I've tried to talk to him, and then my other neighbor has 2 lights in their garage, and you go in my backyard, and it casts shadows when I'm walking around in my backyard. Is there anything we can do with outdoor lighting? And then another question is, I know the CIP budget's coming up, and I've been fighting for lights at Dick Sant Park for pickleball for years. So just remember, the association, by the time we're getting our last 16 courts done next month, we'll put in over $700,000 from the association and some of its members. Mm-hmm. So I think we need $50,000 more dollars and we can get lights.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the partnership we've had with the Pickleball Association. You've done really tremendous work working in partnership with the city to develop that area at Dick Sant. But Doug, you're advocating for lights at Dick Sant that are going to be really, really bright, and then you don't want them in your neighborhood.
Anybody else catch that?
Yeah. People live around Dick Sant Park too. So, but we do have restrictions in our code about the wattage of the bulbs. And
60 watt, whether it's equivalent, if it's LED or but 60 watt max is the outdoor. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, it's in the code. Can you have conversations with your neighbors? And I know that some of these things can impact your views on as you look out at on your patio at night too. Keep in mind that lighting, outdoor lighting, also prevents people from nosing around your house. There is a public safety element or benefit tied to these things as well too. So keep that in mind. If you want people off your property, then lights in the right location that don't impact or negatively impact your neighbors is the way to go. We're not a dark skies community, so that has no relation to that whatsoever. And we don't have street lights, and we have a darker community, but that doesn't make us the definition of a dark sky community. So there's a big difference when it comes to those things.
Going back to issue of a second bridge, you got some funding to go off and study that. You said there was some language in the legislation talking about evacuation. Does that mean that the bridge will only be used for emergency evacuation, or will it be available 24/7?
Yeah, so we're going to do a full study on a second bridge and its completion. The emergency evacuation language in the bill is what I believe is how the sausage was made for Representative Biasucci to get the bill passed and signed into law. So I think he took an avenue of emergency aspect that allowed his colleagues at the legislature to sign onto his bill and get it passed through both chambers and signed by the governor. But we're going to do a full study that not only takes into account the second bridge and accounts on what that'll be, but also the growth of the island and what the future would be. So it's much larger than just the emergency component. But that's, I believe, how Representative Biasucci was able to get that passed.
This is my first coffee with the mayor, and I just really want to say to you, gentlemen, thank you for doing this. I'm so impressed. What an education this is. And you both show such a grasp of the information regarding our city. I'm going to tell my friends to come to this.
Yeah.
And my wife and I traveled, moved 25 times in my working career, and I had a lot of involvement with city councils and with public hearings and the like. So I've avoided them like the plague in retirement. But I'm telling you, from my experience in life and in business, this is really a top-notch outfit. This city is fantastic. And congratulations to Captain Sterling, and well done. We have a safe city and a clean city. And I love the proactive attitude you guys have, looking ahead to the future, not just reacting to problems, but being proactive. And this is a wonderful place, and it just made me prouder to be here today. So I just want to thank you for your time, and I hope you keep doing this.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay.
So your next article in the newspaper about these guys is going to be really, really nice.
Yeah, we'll take two more questions here that I think with the hands up, and then we'll wrap up, and then we'll be here afterwards as well.
A quick question about Allo Services. What are the setbacks of their services getting started, and is there like city permits or that's even been held up getting the office open here on McCulloch?
Yeah, so Allo Communications, with that partnership, we've worked really hard with Allo. I believe if you talk to Allo, they would say that the city has been easy to work with and processing some areas. They're also utilizing some right-of-ways and some of the other utilities infrastructure, and they're having some challenges with that, and some challenges with the state land department and right-of-ways that way. But
there was the Arizona Corporation Commission, and they reach out to us and they say, hey, just to update and if you help if you can. But it took them several months just to get through the Arizona Corporation Commission to get regulated or approved for landline. There's no regulation for internet, no regulation for cable TV, but it took them several months, 4, 5, 6 months, to get permitted to have a landline phone in Arizona. Now they're working with state land and so forth. But internally here, I get calls from their representatives from the CEO asking me to help out with some other cities. So they're pretty happy with what we've done here. We want to make sure that we're holding them accountable and putting in the infrastructure where it needs to be placed in a way that's going to last. But that's their mission. That's their goal as well, too. So it's been a lot of Allo trucks in the neighborhoods as of late.
Yeah, they expect to go live within like the next 12 months or so, but it's going to go by region. They haven't announced what that will be. But as Jess alluded to, they picked Lake Havasu City as their first entrance into the Arizona market for a reason. It's because of the partnerships and the doors that we open. So with the Corporation Commission, well, I don't know what we shook, but we shook something when I reached out to the chairwoman to get it on their docket. If we had an impact or not, I don't know, but we got approved. So
what's great news too is if you've driven on 95 north of Havasu on the way to 40 or back the last couple of weeks, you'll see those really small backhoes that they're digging trenching out there. That's Allo. So it's not just about putting infrastructure within Lake Havasu City. It's making sure that the internet and the connection speeds that come into the city can then tap into that infrastructure. So that's welcome, and that's why some of the delays are occurring with state land. But they continue to do work here. And we're seeing some improvements. I'm hearing from a lot of folks on the Optimum side of things as well, too. So good luck to both of them. May the best internet company win. Yeah.
Do the same rules apply for a rental for 2 months as a short-term rental?
No, so it potentially, it could be, it depends what platform they booked, but anything over 30 days is a long-term rental.
Per
So-
state statute. That state tells us that.
Yeah, so it just depends. About if they booked through like one of the platforms like Airbnb or something for a 2-month long stay, they being the homeowner could regulate it as a short-term rental, but technically by our regulation or code enforcement, anything over 30 days is a long-term rental at that point. And it is governed by different statutes.
Do they still have to post notice on the door to notify?
Nothing. Yeah. It'd be just a, so they wouldn't have to post notice on the door, do any of the 24-hour contacts, nothing like that for what is considered a long-term rental, which is over the 30 days. So. All right, our time this morning has come to an end. Thank you so much for joining us. We will not be meeting in January for the New Year's holiday, so we'll see you again in February. We wish you all a very happy holiday season, and I would be remiss if I did not say that it's River Riders is who's providing the toys at the community dinner, and we welcome you to come on Friday, December 9th. So thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
See you next year.